So this freak, the richest man on the planet, spoke virtually at an AfD rally right after doing what Nazis are perceiving as a neo-Nazi salute on the stage of the inauguration in the same week as he's making Holocaust jokes on Twitter after he did what very much looked like a Nazi salute at the inauguration. And then he goes and virtually speaks at an AfD rally, this far-right party in Germany. This is what he had to say.
So, I think there's frankly too much of a focus on past guilt, and we need to move beyond that. Children should not be guilty of the sins of their parents, or even let alone their parents, their great-grandparents, maybe even. And we should be optimistic and excited about a future for Germany. That's really my message: is be optimistic, excited, and preserve German culture and protect the German people. And and there's some other things that I think would be very helpful too, which is I think you want more self-determination for Germany and for the countries in Europe, and less from Brussels. That's my opinion. I think there's too much bureaucracy from Brussels, too much control from sort of global elite, and when I've given talks at these sort of global government conferences, what I've said is there should be less global government. There should be more determination by individual countries. So I very much hope that the AfD does well, and that Alice Weidel does become chancellor. I think that would be very good for Germany. And I think it's very important. I hope that German people unite and strongly support AfD. Go!
Okay, so there we had it. He hit all the dog whistles there. The global elites.
Right. Culture.
We preserve German culture. Past guilt. Now, I guess it's a good way to talk about how, the politics of remembrance, again, of the Holocaust, of the fact that it is illegal to deny the Holocaust in Germany. They are criticizing the fact that there is baggage for Germany having committed the Holocaust, and we will renew your nationalist feelings about Germany, and don't worry so much about one of the worst crimes committed in the history of humanity. Let's not think too hard about that.
Right. Well, over the years, the AfD has really deepened its ties with real far right extremist groups, and I think it just speaks to their kind of continuous radicalization of the past years. And speaking about Elon Musk, as you well know, he is very much inserted himself on the global stage in the US, but also in Europe, and specifically in Germany, as we just saw. He's on X, on his platform. He's been flooring far-right influencers like Nomi Zeibt, who's pretty well known for kind of spreading all sorts of conspiratorial worldviews and narratives, like the Great Replacement theory, the fact that we're supposedly overrun by immigrants that are then going to replace the white race, all this kind of stuff. His consistent anti-trans messaging, his pro-natalist messaging, and I think all of these things are very resonant with what the AfD is messaging towards as well. And after Musk, so Musk, this kind of flirt with the AfD that pivoted in the clip we just saw. This started in a tweet where he said basically that only the AfD can save Germany. Why he did that? I think Musk is a kind of an erratic character, and it's not. I mean, it aligns with his policies and his worldview right now. But some people are speculating that there's some broader kind of strategy there that he might want to destabilize Germany in order to profit from that, to kind of weaken the euro. But I'm not sure if that's true. It's basically,
he does build a lot of SUVs in Germany, so that's part of it. But I also just think some of this is just ideology from a guy. What's he makes it pretty clear is when the richest man on earth starts talking about global elites. Like, no, you're the global elite. So when you say elites, you mean globalists in the anti-Semitic sense.
Right. Yeah, well, it's like it's quite telling. It's quite telling indeed. And like so the tweet on X where he kind of like claimed that only the AfD can save Germany was quickly followed up in an op-ed in Die Welt, an Axel Springer outlet, which Axel Springer, again, Europe's biggest publisher, the owner of Politico, the publisher that publishes the biggest newspaper in Germany. So there's a real in-depth complicity here on part of like established legacy German media outlets that could very well say, no, we don't give this man a platform to endorse a fascist party, but chose to do the opposite. So this was followed up on like a public conversation between Musk and Alice Weidel that lasted for about an hour, in which honestly Weidel made some pretty bizarre and historically false claims, such as, to give you just a few of the highlights, that Adolf Hitler was supposedly a communist because he nationalized things, or that supposedly like the leftish Palestinians, as she framed it, were like the true heirs of like anti-Semitism, because they criticized Israel after October 7th for Israel's onslaught on Gaza. And I think all of these things are very telling for where the discourse is going right now. Like the Hitler remarks were so obviously untrue that like it actually sparked a little bit of backlash in Germany. But I think when it comes to the other question, for example, about like how supposedly Palestinians and the left are the only ones to blame for anti-Semitism, is that actually reflects like a broader sentiment in Germany right now, where like these kind of notions are shared by kind of like a broader mainstream, and they're effectively helping the AfD kind of to hide their own anti-Semitism, what we spoke about earlier, the kind of like rhetoric of like global elites controlling the economy and whatnot, and kind of discriminate against minorities like Palestinians, which there are a lot of in Germany, by the way, which is another discussion we could have at another time. But yeah.
Well, I mean, I am curious as to how those politics are manifesting themselves, in the sense of when we had you on 10 months ago, it was about the nature of Germany's support for Israel and how there is this outsourcing of collective guilt from the nation for committing the Holocaust into the settler colonial project of Israel. Like, how are the liberals kind of greasing the runway? I think I'm mixing some metaphors here, but making it easier for the AfD and the right to launder their own anti-Semitism?
I think, in Germany, there's something that the Germans refer to as Staatsräson, the raison d'etat, like Germany's kind of like reason of state, which is to almost unconditionally support Israel, which is something that has manifested one-on-one over the past 15 months in this like genocidal war in Gaza, where we've seen that Germany has supported Israel militarily, symbolically, rhetorically, on pretty much every level you could possibly imagine. And it has repeatedly, on an institutional level, within the courts, within the police, on the streets, but also on the part of like major politicians, like critics of Israel's policies have repeatedly been denounced as supposedly anti-Semitic, when in fact they were voicing statements that are pretty much consistent with what all human rights groups who working on that issue are saying, such as things like that Israel is committing apartheid in the occupied territories. Such statements have been called anti-Semitic time and again, and I think that has really helped actually the AfD as an entry ticket to mainstream discourse, because that's exactly what they're saying. Like, Palestinians and leftists who criticize Israel are the real anti-Semites, and we aren't. I mean, that's the AfD's main kind of like one of the main kind of talking points at the moment. And I think like the failure on part of the German, I don't want to be too generalizing here, but like, there was a big scandal. There are so many scandals about like anti-Semitism on the left or on part of Palestinians that it's hard to even know where to begin. But for example, on Berlinale, like the big film festival, like the now Oscar-nominated film "No Other Land," these two protagonists, they basically spoke out against apartheid and against the war in Gaza, and were denounced as anti-Semitic by the mayor of Berlin and by the justice minister of Germany. And like these kind of things happen time and again. And I think it fails to recognize the real threat of anti-Semitism. It actually conceals the fact that there is real growing anti-Semitism, such as the one we see on the part of the AfD, and that like externalizes it to minorities.
And so in the end, you can just basically blame minorities and largely Muslim immigrants in Europe, which is really, at the end of the day, what the AfD and the right wing was already doing in the first place. It's very convenient, right?
Sure.
Because it's the minorities are taking your jobs, and they're also the real anti-Semites.
Exactly. It's quote unquote imported anti-Semitism. So like in Germany, anti-Semitism is, according to the way it is often discussed in the public sphere, it's no longer homegrown, it's actually imported. And like there was a resolution passed by the Bundestag against anti-Semitism. And again, I'm not Jewish. I'm very much against this type. I think anti-Semitism exists in Germany. It is a real problem, but I think it's at the same time, this resolution that was passed on anti-Semitism just a few months ago, it like named a few examples of anti-Semitism, and it referenced Berlinale, what I just told you about, where what happened on Berlinale was really everything but anti-Semitic, but it didn't reference something like Halle, where a city in Germany where about 5 years ago a right-wing neo-Nazi attempted to storm a synagogue and like basically just kill people. And like he killed a few people because he didn't manage to get into the synagogue. But like it's quite remarkable the extent to which there seems to be a bit of a confusion on this topic in Germany, like this, and I think the AfD has been very smart actually in capitalizing on that sense of confusion, and as you said, basically easily blame the others.
Well, Netanyahu, by the way, says this kind of thing all the time, where he says this complete falsity that Hitler got the idea of exterminating the Jews from the Palestinian Grand Mufti at the time. That is just a way to justify dehumanizing Palestinians and absolve the German fascist movement of its responsibility, which you can see like in the form of this party that is intoxicating to people, finding someone else to blame and not internalizing shame. That's what they're selling.
I agree. And, like, I think the current interpretation of Zionism by this specific government that is like so hardcore ethno-nationalist and racist and anti-Palestinian is in many ways also like an inspiration for a party such as the AfD. And, I think the other established parties would do well in kind of understanding that like supporting a government like the current one that has committed these atrocities in Gaza over the past months and is increasingly annexing the West Bank and whatnot is not actually helping a version of historic responsibility that has nothing to do with that. It actually would mean a bunch of other things that you don't tick the box by just agreeing to this type of government.
Well, Hanno Hauenstein, independent journalist based in Berlin, thanks so much for coming on the show today and explaining this to us. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me on anytime.
Thank you.
Hey, folks, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and check out our daily show. We do it every day at 12 p.m. Eastern for about 2.5 hours. We even take phone calls. You should check that out.